In 2022, I was working a 9 to 5 corporate job that literally crushed my soul. I would wake up at 6 a.m., take an hour-long subway ride to the office, sit at a desk for 8 hours doing work that felt unfulfilling to me, only to be told that I am not a team player because I'm only working 8 hours a day and I should be working more, and then take an hour-long subway ride back home just to do the same thing again every single day until I die. I literally felt like Stanley from The Office. Now, one day, I got home after a particularly draining day at work, and there it was. A Share a 7 video had popped up on my TikTok For You page.
Why do you look so young? Oh, because I don't work, baby. I don't work. I'm here for money, so I don't have to work. I think work ages people. I think work ages women a lot. I think stress. I think getting up every day to go to some job you hate ages you.
It felt like I had found a cheat code, a way out of this rat race. Find a rich provider man who will pay all my bills and completely take care of me financially, and I'll never have to work again. No more 6 a.m. wake up, no more hour-long commute each way, and no more being Stanley from The Office. Amazing. It all felt so simple. And the reason it was so simple was because it wasn't the full picture. Spending money on someone is the cheapest, easiest thing you can do as a generous person. Obviously, I'm not talking about some stingy, constipated guy. But think about it. For example, if you ever got a present that said from mom and dad, and you knew for a fact that dad had no idea what was in the gift box, you knew that mom was the one who went out, did the shopping, picked out the gift, wrapped the gift, and then handed it to you. That's a great example of this. Maybe she did it on dad's credit card, but the easy part was spending the money. And it's the same thing with a man who's going to provide for you. Obviously, not all men are generous. Not all men are proper men. A lot of them are just girly boys, like Dakota. That's one of my characters. And they think they have to be taken care of. These are the guys in the Van Cleef bracelets and the pearl necklaces. But the thing is, that dude who's going to provide for you was still going to go to work and make that money. So it's not like he's doing something so extravagant and amazing. Obviously, we're in a sassy man apocalypse and most men just want to be with other men. So just finding a generous provider in itself is a struggle. For me, the baseline of a good male partner is for him to be a provider. That is the bare minimum. In the same way that a man will not date a woman he does not find attractive. But the thing is, being a provider is necessary, but not sufficient. If you were to choose a man solely based on his providing capabilities and how much bread he has, for some reason we've all turned into pigeons and now we're all excited to see a man with bread. But think about this. If you had a son, would you want him to turn out like that man, like his father? If you had a daughter, would you want her to get married to someone like that? If the answer is yes, then great. Just close this video, go on with your life. But social media has distorted our idea of a relationship so badly that we tend to forget your partner is going to be the person who's going to be there through the death of your parents, knock on wood, who's going to be there through the birth of your child, if you choose to have one. They're going to be your hype person through your biggest challenges. They're going to be the shoulder you cry on through your lowest lows. They're going to be with you through your highest highs, through every peak and valley that life throws at you. That is going to be the person who gets you through that, or who is at least by your side when those things happen. And being an ATM is great. Don't get me wrong. I love me a human ATM. But if you've only chosen your partner based on the financial and material elements that they can provide to you, then you might end up being in a hardship rather than a relationship when these times come, because they will come. They're gonna happen. In case you are new here, my name is Nikki. I am your host, and I am the baddest bitch in the building, not to be confused with you, who is also the baddest bitch in the building. And this episode is one that I had initially written and recorded about a month ago, but I held off on posting it because I felt like something was missing. So I uploaded that episode to my Patreon and just kept it there. And I completely rewrote this episode that we're going to dive into today. I completely rewrote it, and it's honestly, it's overdue. And let me tell you this before we get into anything else. I love Shara 7. I have been listening to her YouTube lives for years. I would literally have them downloaded onto my YouTube while I was commuting to and from work. And then I would sit at my desk at work and listen to like 2-3 hour lives that she would do. So I have watched her content inside and out. And at one point, I was using her content to understand how I can get a rich man. And then once my frontal lobe developed, I started using that content to understand how I can become a rich man. And we're going to get into that in a moment. But all that to say, I love the woman. I agree with about 98% of the things that she says. And I don't disagree that we need to find men who are going to provide for us. Granted, there are a lot of women who've just completely opted out of being in romantic relationships with men, and I totally respect that. I actually did an entire episode on how romantic love is literally a patriarchal tool of propaganda, and I did another episode earlier about how falling in love is literally not real. It is a chemical reaction in your brain to get you to reproduce and sit on the dick. Okay? So romantic love is not cutting it. Okay? It is not cutting it. We have to look at our partners and think, what is this person going to provide for me? How are they going to make my life easier? You need to understand the full picture of what Shara 7 preaches. She does not say to be dependent on men. She does not say to be male-centered. She actually literally advocates for women to be the complete opposite. Have your own hobbies, have your own life, use the money that he gives you to put in a savings account or investment portfolio so that you have a way out and never ever be dependent on a man financially. So right off the bat, she's for the girls. However, there is a very high level of emotional detachment that you need to have to fully follow her advice to the letter. Because she says to go out and find a rich provider man. And when she says rich, she means millionaire rich, not some dude who's making 200 grand working as a finance bro. Like a rich ass business owner or some guy who's about to croak, okay? Because she says to go for these wealthy, older men. Because she believes that women shouldn't have to work. You can work if you want to, but you should have the choice, which again, 100% agree with. And she even says that if you are a wealthy woman, there's no reason for you to get married. So we're going to get into all of that and discuss this from not just an intellectual, critical lens, but from a metaphysical lens as well, which I don't think anyone has done yet. And that is why I am a philosopher, because we're going to go and delve way deeper into this than you even thought was possible.
I've been numbed. I can't be emotional anymore. Only for my kids and my cat, my husband. And I'm not really emotional to my husband either. It's just, I just be acting. I'm numb. Why? Because I used to be a mortician. I've seen too much death.
Like I said, I love Shara 7, and she's very entertaining. She's really funny. And that's because she is a larger than life character. Like, you don't really meet people like this in real life. I'm kind of like that in a sense as well. I'm literally like a made up person. And you need to understand that behind that persona, behind Shara 7, Letitia Padua, I think I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. If I'm not, sorry, Letitia. But behind that woman is a very smart, strategic entertainer. And she literally uses two of the very important laws of power from the 48 laws of power that people who want to build an online following have to use. I got my 48 laws of power book here. She uses law 27, play on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following, and law 32, play to people's fantasies. I did a girly twist on that law a few months ago. Now, let's talk about this metaphysical piece. Reality starts with your thoughts. To believe something, you've got to think it first. You've got to internalize it. You've got to see it. And then you have to uphold it and believe it to be true, to be the truth, an objective truth. Your thoughts and your worldview are a filter. They're like a screen for how you view the world and how you interpret messages, like what you see on your TikTok For You page, like sprinkle content. And one of these thoughts that is very pervasive throughout the sprinkle content is all men cheat, which I'm going to get back to in a few minutes. For now, understand that we live in a mediated reality. Okay, reality is filtered through language and symbols. For example, like a symbol that a content creator represents to you because she's playing to people's need to believe in something to create a cult-like following. Law 27. For many women who are especially tired and frustrated, like I was, of working in the rat race, working a 9 to 5, doing something unfulfilling day in and day out, and being drained mentally and physically and spiritually, this type of content represents freedom. Financial freedom, freedom from the rat race. Maybe it represents getting even with men because you're going to get your patriarchal dividends by getting some rich sucker to pay your bills, which I'm going to get into later on in the episode. But it symbolizes something to a lot of women, just like it did for me. It's all part of this fantasy. In the same way that a news network will cover a certain story using specific language by saying this person is the villain, this person is the hero, this person is the victim, and they cover it from whatever angle suits their agenda, it's the same thing when you're being presented content like this. Now, I don't think sprinkle content has any ulterior motive or any malicious intent behind it. Again, I listen to this content all the time. I love it. However, understand that for a lot of content creators, every viewer is a potential client. So they want you to see the world in a certain way, especially in the way that enables you to go from being just a regular old viewer to a paying customer. I know that Shara7 works with women one-on-one, and she does private sessions and Q&As on her Patreon. So obviously I'm not saying she's putting out all this content so that people can buy into her paid products. I don't think she really cares about that because she makes enough money as it is. But be wary of what people present to you, especially if they can profit off of a lack. In the same way that a news network can shape your understanding of what's happening in the world, and they've effectively given you a mediated version of reality, it's the same thing with a lot of content creators and influencers. And they want you to see the world in a certain way so that you see that product or service or whatever it is that they're selling as being a part of your world, of you needing that. And that is hugely based on a lack mindset, which I'm going to get into in a few minutes.
I'm only 2 years into working my 9 to 5 job, and this is awful. So you're telling me I'm having the Sunday scaries every week to dread 5 days of my life, to then be rewarded with a little thrill on Friday, but then be so tired from working that I pass out at like 10 p.m. Live for Saturdays, love them, but really that is only one full day of fun, because Sunday, have a great Sunday morning, and then Sunday afternoon rolls around and I have the Sunday scaries and I'm dreading my life for the next 5 days.
I want to revisit my story about being miserable in my 9 to 5, because your outlook on life is directly determined by your position in it. For example, if you are miserable at your job, but you can't really leave because it pays you well and you have a big fat mortgage, then you might view your job or even your home as traps. Your home is essentially a prison that's keeping you trapped in this god-awful job that you hate, instead of viewing your job as a vehicle that enables you to get your dream home, for example. So your outlook on life is directly determined by your position in it. And most of the time, our outlook is determined by lack. We lack a fulfilling job. We lack the amount of money that we want to have. It's almost entirely determined by lack. And my hypothesis is that we feel like this mainly because a lot of us are pushed to have a career rather than a craft. Because of this late stage capitalism that we're in, people can't have a craft. They have to have a career where they go and serve somebody else, serve the shareholders or some old fart who can't even convert a Word doc to a PDF. And we're so far removed from the impact of our work, if it even has any, that we feel unfulfilled. And capitalism as we know it is not even how it was supposed to exist. The founder of capitalism, Adam Smith, literally envisioned people having a craft. Hey baddies, it's Editing Nikki. I am so sorry. I just realized that I mentioned a historical man and didn't play Smash or Pass. So Adam Smith, honestly, I would say from his side profile, if you see his nose, that guy has a honker. So Smash for sure. But from the front, I'd have to pass. He uses an example of a pin factory that has a division of labor, and guess how many people were in that pin factory? 10. So these socioeconomic conditions in which we live are so twisted, and they don't enable us to live the fulfilling lives that we are entitled to have because we're not able to create. We have to consume. We're stuck in this cycle of overconsumption rather than creating. And so we become absolutely fucking miserable. And that's exactly how I felt at my corporate job. I know a lot of women can relate to this. And if you work at a 9 to 5 and you're happy, then you're part of the exception. And I'm genuinely happy for you. And I hope that you stay happy there. And a lot of this hypergamy sprinkle content feeds off of the lack that we have by being in the rat race. Now, I'm not saying that these creators like Shara7 intentionally did this. I think this is more of a byproduct of the socioeconomic climate that we live in, but it presents an easy way out, like it did for me. Oh, marry a rich guy and you don't have to work. And if you do work, it can be something that you like. So we view the provider man as an exit route from the rat race. And this is especially concerning for Gen Z women. I'm born in 1997, so I'm right on the butt crack of Gen Z and millennial, so I really don't know where I fit, but I see this with a lot of women my age and women who are younger than me, especially the prefrontal lobe development girlies. Gen Z people are already just very skeptical of having a career. They don't want to be in the rat race. I was like this as well. And for a lot of women, marrying a rich provider man is a way of them getting saved. They think someone is going to come and save them. So Shara7 explicitly tells women to use her teachings as a way to level up, not as a way to save them, but as a way to go from one situation to a better situation. I'm around a lot of Gen Z women. I've seen with my own eyes girls who are in their 20s, like early to mid 20s, who are dating men above the age of 55. And these girls have nothing going for them. They don't have a career. They barely have an education. Or if they do have an education, they completely just stopped working after they started dating this guy. And they've basically just done everything that Shara7 has told them not to do. So they're taking this content and using it, morphing it in a bastardized way to get out of the rat race without understanding the implications that it's going to have for them down the line. So this content literally needs to be kept away from people with an undeveloped frontal lobe. And this reminds me of something one of my high school teachers would say. The shortcut draws blood, the long cut draws sweat. She was a very intimidating Jamaican lady, and she obviously said this with a lot more gravitas than I'm saying. But the shortcut is always the long way. So for a lot of these girls who think that a provider man is going to come and save them from the rat race, it's not. They've literally sacrificed their future and financial independence for short-term gratification. And materialism, because a lot of these undeveloped frontal lobe girlies are driven by materialism. And I believe that materialism is the language of the unfulfilled. When I worked my corporate job and I was under stress all the time because of all these stupid deadlines and things like that, and I felt unfulfilled, I would turn to shopping. I would literally be in my bed at like 1 a.m. online shopping, buying a bunch of crap that I did not need and getting that rush of, again, short-term gratification. Because the only thing I felt like I had going for me from this stressful job was my paycheck. So I would just spend it on stuff, and then the material things would be the physical symbol of my pain and suffering and misery and unfulfilled being at that job. So materialism is the language of the unfulfilled. And our outlook on life is a direct result of capitalism, which reduces people to their rawest form of being, to their rawest form of being a consumer. Because we're taught that you are only as good and as worthy as what you have. Oh, you have a nice designer bag? Great, you must be worth something. Oh, you're wearing skinny jeans? God forbid you wear skinny jeans near a Gen Z person. You are going to get clowned. But if you wear something that is not trendy or out of style, then you look dumb. People are going to look down on you. Okay? Not to be confused with vintage and Y2K and those aesthetics, because people go out of their way to thrift stores that are really just price gouging places to spend a bunch of money to look like they have an aesthetic from 25 years ago. But if you have something that's not trendy, then you look like a clown. And being provided for makes you not only a better consumer, but a better woman. Okay? You're not only as good as what you have, you're also only as good as what your man can provide you. So your value is external. You're in your feminine. And in my notes, I wrote in your feminine, barf. You're in your feminine when your material needs have been fulfilled. And let me tell you something right off the bat, okay? I am as spoiled as the next bitch, okay? I am spoiled up to my eyeballs. I like being pampered. My nails are always done. My toes are always done. I like having nice things. I like being taken care of and provided for and pampered, of course. But I have done a lot of work to decouple my worth from what I have. And a lot of that work came after I quit my corporate job because I was no longer feeling unfulfilled, right? Materialism is the language of the unfulfilled, and I was no longer feeling so unfulfilled that I needed to go and buy myself things to feel better and feel worthy. And to quote or paraphrase from Frederick Engel's work called The Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State, men's class in society, the way they're viewed, is determined by their relationship to the means of production. Are you a worker? Are you a boss? Are you wealthy enough to be a provider? Like, what is your relationship to the means of production? Women's class is determined by their sexual ties to men. And in a patriarchy in which we live, women are deemed more respectable if they are married. Being married has a social status attached to it, and a woman who isn't married, she's single, unmarried, even child-free, is viewed as a spinster. She's infantilized, essentially. Now, extrapolating this to the hypergamy content, again, because social media takes a bastardized version of this content, we are taught that women are only as good as the type of provider that they're with. Again, that our worth is external and that our worth as a woman is coupled with the providing abilities of our man. And I talk about how patriarchy determines our reality all the time, but capitalism also does a pretty good job at shaping our reality. And hypergamy content, whether you want to think of it as a byproduct of the capitalist system we live in, or you want to think of it as a way out, it still feeds into the way that men and women are perceived in terms of their status by reducing men to their ability to be an ATM and women to their ability to attract said ATM. And hypergamy content, like Sprinkle Sprinkle, views marriage as a tool for financial gain. Shara 7 says herself that if you are a wealthy woman, you literally have no use for marriage. So it really reduces the role of marriage and of having a partner in terms of its financial abilities. And listen, I love flipping the script on things, and I respect that Shara 7 has flipped the script on marriage. And for 4,000 years, marriage was an institution that enslaved women. It was literally the institutionalization of women's enslavement. So let's flip the script on that. Yes, of course, we want to use a marriage as a way to better our position in life. However, her philosophy is very one-dimensional, and it neglects the fact that a partner who you're going to be living with for decades needs to be more than just an ATM. It's almost as if a husband and wife are two separate entities and they don't really have to get along. And Shara 7 talks about this a lot. She says that if a man cheats on you, one of the worst things you can do is break up with him. And going back to how capitalism reduces people to their rawest form of just being a consumer, being somebody who can just reach into their pocket and spend money on something, this hypergamy content also risks reducing men and women to basically just their rawest form of being of value to the other person. He's your ATM and you're his arm candy. And when we're reduced to this simple form, we can't really break free of our chains. You can really only break free of your internalized patriarchy by unlearning it. And I'm all for using your femininity to get what you want. I advocate for this a lot. So obviously that's where me and Shara 7 have a lot of overlap. But where we differ is that I talk a lot about unlearning things. So get your patriarchal dividends, but actively unlearn as the time goes on so that you don't perpetuate things that will actually harm you in the long run.
I don't work. I'm here for money, so I don't have to work. I think work ages people. I think work ages women a lot. I think stress. I think getting up every day to go to some job you hate ages you.
So I did a 5-part series in October of 2025 on the relationship between capitalism and patriarchy and how they essentially joined forces to have this gross mutant baby. Now, you can listen to that series if you like. I'll recap what I said here very briefly because I don't want to repeat what I mentioned there. But the origins of patriarchy can be traced back around 10,000 years. There isn't a single clean starting point for it, but it can be traced back to when humans moved out of hunter-gatherer societies and into organized states. And one of the main elements of patriarchy at that time was the division of labor in terms of how people can serve the state. Men would go to war and also lead because they gave themselves the positions of power, and women would be relegated to the domestic realm, reproduction and looking over the household. So initially, patriarchy was the organization of servitude to the state. Now, from the time of around the Industrial Revolution, about 250 years ago in the mid-18th century, the servitude to the state shifted to servitude to capitalism. And that's when that mutant baby was pushed out of someone's butthole. I don't know if it was capitalisms or patriarchies, but they had a mutant baby, okay? And the way I like to think of this organization of servitude is that capitalism and patriarchy are interrelated in a way where women are subservient to men are subservient to capitalism, and capitalism is subservient to patriarchy. Obviously, there's still like some cross-contamination there, and now that women are able to be financially independent, women can be subservient to capitalism directly without men as the intermediary, but that's essentially how I conceptualize a simple way of that organization of servitude. Again, with the lines being blurred. Now, men get their patriarchal dividends by cashing in their labor and trading their time for capital, aka having a job and making money. So men have to be of some use in order to get their patriarchal dividends. I'm not a male apologist. Of course, the system is still made by men for men to succeed. However, there's obviously a lot of intersections between not just what's hanging in between their legs, but their skin tone, their social class, socioeconomic status, all of that. So yes, men have myriad unearned and undeserved social, political, and economic advantages. Now, humans are matriarchal. Despite this social experiment that is patriarchy, we are actually matriarchal. And one of the roles of men, as I've discussed, is to serve women. Okay? A good boy. Who's a good boy? A good boy is a man who's actually submissive to a woman. Not in a way of like, oh, I'm better than you, let me go step on your neck. Although if you do that, I totally respect it. But in a way of contributing to the collective good as determined by a woman. If you're having a hard time envisioning this, think of a household. At least in my family, pretty much any household is run by the woman. The mom is the head of the household, and the dad serves the family, serves the mom, and serves the collective good of the family. And the household is just a little mini version of society. Now, under this mutant baby, capitalistic, patriarchal society that we live in, men have been told that their value depends on being submissive to capitalism and patriarchy. So they're not good boys anymore. They want to get their patriarchal dividends, but not by being good boys. But unfortunately, capitalism depends on servitude. Servitude to one master, one skill set, one job, one career. Oh, I can't pivot from this industry to that. I only went to school for this thing, or I only have a skill set for this job. How do I change industries? So we get stuck in this servitude to the one. And the system traps us into this servitude in a very sneaky way by conditioning us to think in terms of economic logic, which means that we look at everything through the lens of capital. When we're comparing two jobs, the better job 99% of the time is the one that has a higher salary. When we're comparing two items, the one that we perceive as being higher quality is the one that is more expensive. When we look at somebody's outfit, if they have a designer bag or nice expensive shoes, again, we perceive that person as looking better and being more put together based on the cost of what they're wearing. So we view everything through economic logic. And now that I've mentioned it, you're going to understand that. You're going to see it everywhere. You can't unsee it. Even in your own decision making is what I'm saying. Because when the revolution comes, oh my God, this whole episode has literally been just the embodiment of when the revolution comes. Baddies of the world, unite. But back to the academic logic. We revere things and people when they have a higher dollar sign attached to them. We look at somebody with a big salary and respect them. We revere them. And even me, when I was working in my corporate job, that I felt like I was just stuck in this shithole, like a spiritual shithole, I was like, you know what? I can tough it out because of the salary. And that was me justifying misery through economic logic. Now, back to Sprinkle Sprinkle and the whole hypergamy discussion that we were having a few moments ago. Listen, everything I said was very important for us to get to this point. Class, please, if anyone has any questions, not you, Dakota, anyone questions? No? Okay. If you do, raise your hand. All right. So back to Sprinkle Sprinkle. What Shara 7 says is that all men cheat. How do you know if a man cheats? If he has a pulse. And fighting a provider man is a way of us getting our patriarchal dividends. Because all men cheat, you're better off being with the one who's going to pay up. And Shara even says this herself. She says that one of the worst things you can do if you find out that your boyfriend chat on you is to break up with him. You got to charge him a penalty, make him get you gifts and give you money for being guilty, and then get him to marry you so that you can use that guilt for your financial gain. Now, I'm all for women in male-dominated fields. If you want to do this, if you feel like this is what's best for you, go ahead and do it. It's your life, right? I'm not here to judge anyone. However, I find a few issues with this logic. And if you don't have a high level of emotional detachment, then it's going to be really hard for you to get your patriarchal dividends from a cheater. And this is coming from me. Like, I am a very emotionally detached person to the point where sometimes I think I'm a psychopath.
If your rich boyfriend cheat, marry him. There's going to be so many more men that are going to cheat on you anyway. They're going to be like poor, ugly. They might have money. They might not. They may be short. They may have stank breath, but they're all going to find a way to cheat on you. You might as well reap the benefits of a man who's cheating.
So the first issue is with the logic of all men cheat. Again, not a male apologist. I believe that the majority of men cheat. I've worked in an office. I've seen that there is nobody more single than a married man at work. So I've seen it with my own eyes, babes. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The majority of them men will fuck a rotisserie chicken. So yeah, the majority of men cheat. I do not think that all men cheat. I think that all men are liars. That I believe 100%. But remember that reality starts with your thoughts. If you think it, then it's going to become real to you. So if you think that all men cheat, then you're going to go out and you're going to end up with a guy who's going to cheat on you. Or if you think that all men cheat, you're going to be with a guy who maybe didn't cheat on you, he hasn't chat, but then you act really insecure and you kind of push him towards the cheating route. Because when you tell somebody they can't do something, that's when they want to do it. So through your thoughts, you've created your reality. And telling women that all men cheat is like telling girls that boys are only after one thing. It makes girls view themselves as objects in the eyes of boys, and it tells boys that it's okay to view girls as objects because that's all you want, right? That's all you want anyways. So it's a harmful way of thinking, and they're not inherently wrong. Like, there is truth in that, but to take it to that extreme is wrong, because then that logic is used to justify you staying with somebody who's shown you the highest form of disrespect. To me, the cheating tax just doesn't cut it. Okay, a relationship to me is not like a Disney Plus membership where if you have the base membership, you get ads and no cheating privileges. But if you pay like $25 a month, then you get the cheating privileges. And then if you pay $30 a month, you can get cheating privileges. Plus you can fuck a rotisserie chicken whenever you want. No, that does not cut it for me. To me, cheating is the highest form of disrespect. And if I find out about it, then I'm going to take your money, I'm going to take your pee-pee, and I'm going to take your rotisserie chicken. Get your patriarchal dividends, but don't do it at the cost of your dignity. Again, if you can be highly emotionally detached, because you need a very high level of emotional detachment to be able to follow sprinkle to the letter. If you can be that detached and you're like, great, I'm happy, this is what I want, then good for you. Somebody like that is more of the exception than the rule. For the majority of us, cheating comes with a lot of resentment, hurt, even if you're emotionally detached, even if, the man should like the woman more than the woman likes the man, obviously, but even with that dynamic, even with all the detachment and all the mental gymnastics that we can play, it's still a form of disrespect. And I'm not jiggy with it. He may have gone jiggy with somebody else, but I can't be jiggy with that. And that's where I disagree with a lot of this content, because it brainwashes women into thinking that as long as your bills are paid, your material needs are met, and you're taken care of financially, then he can do whatever he wants. Like, he's just got to pay the fee. But like I mentioned earlier, your partner is the person who's going to be with you through the lowest lows, the highest highs. They can be your biggest hype person. They can be your biggest enemy. So being a provider is necessary, but not sufficient. And because systems like capitalism and patriarchy are self-correcting, because they're built to outlive you, they are pushing you towards the equilibrium, towards capitalistic and patriarchal equilibrium. I talk about this in my book in great length, so I'm not going to repeat it here, but there's a pull towards the center. The path of least resistance is towards the center of being just like everybody else. And you need to actively resist that pull towards the center. And one of the ways you do that is by unlearning your internalized patriarchy and internalized misogyny. So I'm all for women in male-dominated fields. Get that bag, use men however you want, like do whatever you want to do, but make sure you are unlearning your internalized patriarchy, and make sure that you are not putting yourself in a situation where you're going to perpetuate patriarchy and you think you're being cute and quirky and smart, but the guy pulls an Uno reverse and you end up actually getting screwed over in the long run. Like a lot of these girls I know in their 20s who are dating men above 50.
Women always win at the end if they are smart instead of emotional.
So I'm not telling you to go date a brokey. I'm not telling you to go and propose to the homeless guy on the street. And I'm not telling you to date for potential either. Okay? What's in front of you is what you're getting. All right? If a guy is in medical school and he's going to be rich in a few years, great. Hit me up in a few years. What I'm saying is be smart. Use this information however you will. Maybe you agreed, maybe you disagreed, maybe a little bit of both. Get your patriarchal dividends, but remember to always be smart about it and to ensure that you never end up in a situation where you might be dependent on another person. And also be wary of short form content that is built from long form content. You rarely see me putting out clips of my episodes because it's really hard for me to take a 30-second clip of a 30-40 minute episode and pull that out of context. There might be some good one-liners here and there, but it's really hard to take these things out of context, and they can be interpreted a million different ways. And that's what we're seeing with a lot of Shara Seven's videos, because it's a 30-second clip of a 3 to 4 hour YouTube live, and what we get is this bastardized version of an entire philosophy. So like I said before, humans are matriarchal. Men who want to be good boys are submissive to women. They want to make their women happy, and they want to make their women happy beyond just the financial, because spending money on someone and providing for someone is easy. That man still had to go to work whether or not you were in the picture, but providing the emotional support, the spiritual support, and doing those things that require more than just, hey, here's my card, hey, here's the auto deposit. Those are the things that actually require a lot of work and effort and thought and love. And I don't believe in falling in love, because that's just a chemical reaction in your brain trying to get you to reproduce. But I do believe in growing in love and letting somebody prove to you that they deserve to be a part of your life. And your relationships should benefit you. Okay? Don't feel guilty. Your relationships should benefit you, but you are worth more than just a dollar amount. You're worth more than just your bills being paid and you getting nice things. You're worth the emotional and mental and spiritual support that comes with that whole package. And yes, it is literally next to impossible to find a guy who has an IQ in the triple digits and doesn't make you want to rip your eyeballs out. But it is better to be alone than to be with a buffoon. Mejor sola que mal acompañada. And make sure to always ask yourself, if I had a son, would I want him to grow up and be like this man? If I had a daughter, would I want her to marry a man like this? And keep that as the gauge that tells you whether or not you're with a buffoon. All right, with that, I'm going to close the episode. Thank you all so much for listening. I know that this was a lot, and this is a topic of contention. I know a lot of people are not going to agree, but let me know your thoughts in the comments, and let's keep the conversation going. All right, until next time, don't forget that you are the baddest bitch in any building that you step foot in. In the meantime, stay bad. Love you. Bye.
All right, it's time to run through all my shout-outs of the bad bitches supporting on Patreon. I changed accents. Shout out to Kate, Danny, Lindsay, Emberly, Brittany, Hannah, Shara, Amanda, Adriana, Mina, Gemma, Katia, May, Naomi, Nilufar, Adelaide, Nadia, Faith, Amy, Melinda, Sophia M, Sophia K, Jada, Amara, and Kat. Thank you, baddies, so much for your support.
Women aren't supposed to work that much. We're not built to work. So you're going to deplete yourself by working like a man. And the more you work, the older you look.